you will only say everything in Mario voice, but you get a house and your interest rate is 1%. It's a me, David. I'm talking
for your
like
whole
Mario for
life.
It's a me. I'm a taking that deal. Not to turn this into the soup podcast.
The Soupcast. We're talking about chili again? Is that what's happening?
We're not talking about chili again.
No.
This time we're talking about chicken tortilla soup, which is what we had tonight.
Ooh, nice.
Really nourished me in a way that I was not expecting.
Did you make it or did you order it in?
No, we made this one.
Oh, damn, hell yeah.
It was really good, really tasty. I like, not to be like so woo-woo, but like I use bone broth in this one. Like sometimes you can feel it sometimes. So you're like, ooh, man, I feel good.
You feel the power of the bones?
I feel the power of bones, man.
Are you about to start another spooky story right now?
This one's called The Power of Bones.
I grew 2 skeletons that day.
Hello, welcome to Video Game Podtimism. It is the Optimists video game variety show where two best friends talk about the wonderful world of gaming and apparently, when it's fall, soup. My name is Chase.
And my name is David. I also had a tasty run-in with soup yesterday. Ooh, it started getting chilly here in Santa Barbara, and Mallory looks at me and goes, I'm going to make some soup. And she goes into the kitchen and makes the most delicious soup. We had some garbanzo beans in there. We had some...
Oh, yeah.
She already had some chicken stock that she had made. We had some zooks in there, had some nice hearty kale, and then some leftover smoked chicken to round it all out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That was real good. That was some good soup. Same thing. I felt nourished. It was nice and warm. The house was cold.
Yeah.
It just felt like a little...
It really does hit different.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of an oasis. Instead of a cool place in a hot area, it's a hot spot in a cool area.
It's a hot tub in the Antarctic. Hey, they just keep doing video games, dude.
They're not stopping. They're saying, hey, keep enjoying amazing game after amazing game this year, and they don't give me time to recover emotionally or physically. It's rough.
One of the games I'm going to talk about, I beat it and then immediately started another one, and I'm like, I can't handle the level of quality that I'm being delivered.
I'm having too much fun. I'm having too good of a time right now.
The pace of games right now it feels like whenever I've traveled and like so many things that are new are happening, it feels like I can barely hang on to all of them. That like it takes a little while of like reflection and remembering to be like, oh yeah, that happened.
Yeah, it's just you don't have time to process the last great game.
No,
because usually after you play a really good game, you're thinking about it for like a week or so afterwards. You're like playing some other things, but they're not grabbing you like this last game did. But with right now, it's just one after the other. They ain't stopping.
In like 2025, I'll be like, damn, dude, Lake Haven Chrysalis was so good at the beginning of 2023. Yeah, it's crazy. Do you? I would actually love to hear what you got going on right now. What are you playing?
What I got going on?
Yeah.
Okay. Besides, I'm playing mostly the same stuff right now.
Yeah.
Forza Motorsport, still in it, still really enjoying it.
It's very fun. Yeah.
Love being the car. I love the weather effects in this one. Really good.
Yeah.
I've always said it before on this podcast, but I just love a good like rain, like drive through the rain in a video game.
Yeah.
Something about that aesthetic that just hits me really well. So great game still, really loving it. Still playing Nier Replicant. The story is getting wacky. It's becoming a Yoko Taro game.
Someone in our Discord had chimed in of like, keep playing it because it gets there, which I'm like very relieved to hear.
It is definitely getting there. I have no idea what's going to happen in this game, but I'm here for it. It's really good. I'd say the combat is maybe just like a skosh below Nier Automata, but it is not that far off. It's still Platinum Games doing the combat in this one, and I think they just took the Nier Automata battle system and just put it into this remake of Nier from back in the day. So really just smooth combat, same great vocal music in the game, vocalizing music in the game, I should say.
Yeah, it's like a vocal heavy soundtrack.
Yeah, it has that Nier aesthetic and now that Nier feel. Since it is getting into this wacky existential crisis of a story. So really great, really enjoying that one. Interested to see where it's going to go. And of course, still just so deep in Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
the city is overwhelming in
it's a lot, yeah.
the amount of stuff. It's almost like a sensory overload because there's so many things to do and see. It does feel like, I'm a small adventurer from the Midwest who just made it to New York City, and I just got off the bus, and I'm here for the first time in Times Square. And it's just it's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
So excited, but also overwhelmed by this game and just the vastness of it. But we're still enjoying just going through, plodding along an hour here or there. I will say that the game is getting a lot more buggy in this act. A couple of crashes so far on the PS5. Not enough to, ruin the game or anything like that. Yeah. It has a pretty generous autosave function that has saved us quite a few times. But definitely just noticing a little bit of fraying around the edges, at least in this section. But I'm sure that, in like another year or so, they're going to release more patches and it's going to run like a dream. This is just the nature of a game this large and intricate and deep that, especially playing multiplayer when we're getting a little far away from each other, starts to chug a lug a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but still great. Still an amazing game with just so much packed into it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that Act 3 wasn't in early access, which may speak a little bit to like why that part of it is a little bit buggier. They probably just had less time or like less exposure to people to get like, hey, this weird edge case happened to me or this thing happened. And yeah, it slowed down quite a bit for me too when I got there. I turned, when I was playing on PC, I think it was like DLSS or something, which is like a way to upscale it without actually rendering more of the graphics, which did actually help a lot. But yeah, it's heavy. There's a lot of stuff in Baldur's Gate. It's very dense.
I don't know if I can do that on the PlayStation, but I'll look to see if I can just tweak things a small bit.
I don't think you can. I think it's like very specifically a NVIDIA chip thing. And I think just PC stuff. So it seems kind of experimental. So I'm not totally positive like what the scope of that is, but also like I'm not a gearhead or like a tech head. So I think that explanation is probably underselling what is actually going on and probably not exactly appropriate for like what is happening there. But what happened was I checked a box that said do something cool and made it look better and made my GPU a little bit less mad at me for running around Baldur's Gate.
You need to walk around Baldur's Gate, not run. Okay. I'm chugging along here as best as I can, baby.
Hell yeah.
And anything else I'm playing? We played Mario Party last night. We played Horrorland because it is the season to do spooky things. And it's still great. Still a pleasure to play.
Yeah. I saw that Mario Party 3 got added to the N64 bundle.
I think they have 1, 2, and 3 on there now, don't they?
They do, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So you can play the oldies, as it were.
Yeah. You sure can, but also like, just give me a couple more levels in the All-Stars. Come on, guys.
It is a bit of a bummer.
Like, they are very well-made levels. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
They're beautiful. But All-Stars.
A couple more would be sick.
We only got one All-Star team right now.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Anyways, a small gripe about a very good game.
Yeah, totally.
That's everything I've been playing. Chase, what have you been playing?
Oh, man. These video games, they just keep coming. Where to even start? I will mention that I'm still playing through Earthbound. And having a really good time. I want to, like I said when I brought it up last time, I do want to beat it before I like really speak to it. Because I have heard that like getting to the end of that it hits pretty hard, but I'm really loving it thus far. I think I had said last time like, oh, I'll talk about it soon because I'll beat it, and like it's foolish. My hubris immediately punched me in the face because like it is so long, this video game.
Yeah.
Just so much stuff to do. It's such a lengthy game. So I think I'm like a little over halfway there, but I've played it so much already. I feel like JRPGs of that era are indulgent in their length. I feel like there's a lot going on there, but I'm still really enjoying it. I watched Over the Garden Wall a couple days ago. Those two things, like they're not exactly the same, but I think there is a connection to that both of them have to like an illogicalness to the way that the world works, but it still kind of like makes sense internally, where like things are just so bizarre in Earthbound. All of the like adults are so strange and like don't act like real people, but like because you're playing as like a kid, you kind of get to interpret it as like, why did that guy just say blah 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 at the end of his sentence, or was that actually just Ness like tuning out of what that dude was saying, or anything like that. In the same way that like Over the Garden Wall, it's like much more like hi-fi, but still there's like a logic to how the world works there that kind of reminds me of a similar thing.
Gotcha.
But yeah, stuff for later. I'm not going to talk about it too much yet. I will say I don't have much more to say about it, but Em and I beat Mario Wonder, and it was like very, very good.
Okay.
Still, I think pretty much everything I said about it last time still stands, and I don't have that much more to add other than like, yeah, that game was fucking good. I really liked Mario Wonder.
Good Mario game.
It was a very good Mario game. Yeah, refer back to the last one if you want to hear about that. But the two things that I want to talk about that are a front of mind right now, the first of which is Spider-Man 2, Marvel Spider-Man 2.
Love it.
Beat this one.
Nice.
In fact, platinumed this one.
Whoa.
A very platinumable game, I will say.
Oh, God. What's the name of the company that does
Insomniac.
this? I feel like Insomniac does that with their games. They make it easy to be like, oh, I did the whole thing.
Yes. And like, that is so refreshing in so many ways. Not only the ability to like platinum everything, but just the sheer ability to say, hey, this game is like done now. If you want it to be done now, we don't have any more like side quests or anything going on. Like it's over.
You've done it all, kid.
I feel like I'm constantly in my PlayStation menu, like agonizing over like which one of these games can I delete to make more space. And all of them, I'm like, there's like more stuff in there. I feel like I should play, but like I finished this one, I got 100% and immediately deleted it because I was like, okay, yeah, we're good. Like I don't need to go back in there.
Bozo.
Yeah. But man, what a good game. I really enjoyed this. So for anybody who's like not as familiar with this, there's been a recent run of like Marvel based Spider-Man games. Like they're all Marvel based, I should say, but like made much more closely with Marvel in mind and like the outsized influence that company now has. But there was just Marvel Spider-Man, which came out, I think in like 2019, if I remember correctly, maybe 2018, like somewhere around there. And that one felt like quite a splash for me. I was really impressed by it. I think partially just because like I wasn't expecting it to be as like well considered or like well written as it was.
It was a very nice story, I thought. Yeah,
like I think it's really easy to underwrite a comic book story and have that be fine. You know, like you really don't need the writing to be very good to have it qualify for like, that was a comic book story. And like, not that they're, you know, writing Citizen Kane of video games or anything like that, but like it felt really competent in a way that I feel like they didn't have to do. I don't know. I found it really good in the same way that like that most recent Ratchet and Clank game. I was like, there's stuff happening here. They're saying something. I can't say that it's, you know, the most complicated stuff ever, but I like it. I like the fact that they're considering the writing and making like the characters feel more rounded and like real people, despite the fact like, you know, Ratchet and Clank is a silly and ridiculous game. And like to some extent, so is Spider-Man, but like, I think there is huge opportunity with comic book stories to actually say some really cool stuff. Sure. Just because it can put on display like what makes those superheroes great or what makes them fallible or anything like that. And yeah, I found their version of Peter Parker in that one really good. He seemed like a real guy, and also like they were grappling with what would happen in the situation were you to actually get Spider-Man powers. Yeah,
felt grounded.
Yes, yeah. And then they followed that up with the like smaller sized Spider-Man Miles Morales, which came out on, I think that was like a PlayStation 5, like one of the first games they dropped. Yeah. And that was also really good. Like I think that they brought the brevity to bear there because they had marketed as like, hey, this is not as big of a game as the last one was, but still told a very impactful story, still was super fun to play as a Spider-Man. Yeah. And I think also brought the stuff that Miles Morales is good at to bear, right? Like that the storytelling and what like who Miles is and what he struggles with, like was very fun to see in a game. So anyway, they dropped Spider-Man 2, which they were like, hey, both of them are in this one, which is exciting. I like
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Should they have named it Spider-Man instead of Spider-Man 2?
It's so goofy.
Spider-Man
Wii U. Spider-Man U. New Spider-Man.
New Super Spider-Man.
So, like I was saying, I don't think that this is as big of a splash as the first one was, just because like I have already been convinced that Insomniac can do this. They made a very good case in the first one, and like if that was the only Spider-Man game they ever made, it would have been like, yeah, it's really good. And I don't feel like it needs to be iterated upon, but like I'm glad that they have here. I think that they do much more with the story than they did in the first one.
Oh, okay. In a good way?
In a good way. Yeah.
Cool.
I think like the first one, it felt like, and Miles Morales to some extent, it felt like they were telling a believable story about a person And like all of the beats felt emotionally grounded in a way where it all made sense to me.
Yeah.
But I feel like this one is trying to put a pin on like a little bit bigger of some topics and like themes that are going on in there, which I just really appreciate. Again, it's the same sort of like ground of like what makes Spider or like comic book stories really cool is because like these are not stories that happen very often, but you can still comment on like, you know, important shit, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot in there, but I think the thing that spoke to me the most was the idea of rehabilitation being possible. A lot of the villains from the first game and just like, you know, Spider-Man lore in general are still in this game, but they are not playing villains anymore. Like a lot of them are like the first one you run into, like very beginning of the game, not spoiling a lot here, but first one you run into is Sandman.
Sure.
He's like attacking New York. And a lot of the conversations that Peter Parker and Miles Morales are talking about are like, dang it, like why today? And like, why would you go back on all the good you've done so far? Right. Like that's frustrating because he's worked so hard to not do this. Right. And so you have that, you see villains who are just like working jobs in the game.
Whoa,
and like, and also Peter Parker and Miles Morales go at certain points to great lengths to make sure that those dudes are safe, right? That there are moments where they're like, we can't just leave this villain behind, or previous villain, I should say.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think a lot of the game is like grappling with A, rehabilitation, and B, like redemption of like, are those two things linked, right? Do you need to be one to be the other? And I think that like there is a belief that a lot of people have, at least in the US, that like jail and prison is not for rehabilitation, that it is just to sort of like keep the quote unquote crazies away.
Punishment.
Right? Yeah, punishment, right? And like, I guess a little bit of background there, like, you know this, and I think we've mentioned on the show before, but like my dad does work with rehabilitation for like prisoners through a kind of group therapy, and like poetry is also involved there.
Sure.
And if you want to check it out, there's a very good documentary called The Work, if you want to see that. You can see my dad in there.
He's in it.
It's a good documentary on its own, but yeah, it's heavy. It's good. But I think through the work that he did from like a very young age, he was trying to impart, and like the work that they do is trying to impart on, you know, more people that rehabilitation is possible. It is just incredibly difficult. And takes a lot of work, right? And I think the thesis of a lot of those programs is that like nobody's beyond redeemable, right? That like if somebody wants to, you know, be rehabilitated, that is a thing that is possible for a lot of people. There's some heavy work that is involved with that, right? You know, depending on your situation. And I think that is also like how it's also a personal journey, right? Of like what does that actually mean to be rehabilitated, and like how do you like forgive yourself, and you know, if you're willing to go there, how do the people who are involved in any of that stuff forgive you, and all that sort of stuff. It's a lot, but it's something that I think is totally necessary because we have so many people in the prison system in the United States. Like it's really out of whack. And you know, I'm not going to dig into, because this would be 4 hours of podcast of like the prison industrial complex.
Chase Railskins, the prison industrial complex. Yeah.
But I think that it's really cool that Spider-Man of all things, and I think it does actually make sense for that character to be somebody who is like, I want to do good, and I don't think that these people are beyond help, right?
Yeah.
I think Peter Parker specifically is a fantasy of like just a nearly objective good guy, you know?
Yeah.
That like a lot of the superheroes, they try to build in this kind of like some kind of fault or grayness to their morality. And like, of course, this isn't true across the board, but I think a lot of what like is compelling, at least to me, about Spider-Man is that like this dude is usually pretty good. That like he's a nice guy. He kind of just wants to help people and doesn't really want a lot in return. And, you know, that comes with its own faults. But I think that it is helpful to see like what that means in regard to like helping people who don't want to be villainous anymore. I don't think that the game actually gets to like the causes of why someone would do crime in the first place. You know, like it's very much more focused on like, hey, Mysterio doesn't want to be bad anymore. You know, what can we do to help him out?
Doesn't want to go too deep into things.
It's not talking about like the material conditions that would cause someone to do crime, right? Like it's not saying like, oh, these bad guys don't have any other option, or like, you know, they don't have a support system that could feasibly help, that they could feasibly lean on to be supported when like they lose a job or, you know, don't have anybody else around them to help them, because like you are definitely still beating absolute ass as Spider-Man against some of these criminals, you know,
not killing them, but maiming them pretty good,
really beating the shit out of these
they're gonna need a lot of therapy, these guys.
yeah, like swinging one totally all the way around Spider-Man and then slamming him into the ground.
Just rodeo lassoing some guy and then just yeeting him off an edge, off a building.
Exactly. So like I think the sort of like regular normal bad guys that are in this one, they do a little bit of hand waving of like, these are guys who choose to be bad, you know, which I think, you know, that is sort of implicitly supporting part of the prison industrial complex, but like I do think it's admirable that they're trying to tackle the other end of it, of like, you know, how do we forgive these people, how do we support them, because like for all intents and purposes both of the Spider-Men are totally on the other side of like, these people are redeemed, we're just trying to keep or help them in the ways that we can, right? At no point are they like, wow, this guy's a total asshole, except for one specific guy. Sure. That I won't ruin, but Miles does not like him. And that's like a big part of the story, is like, can Miles deal with that?
Gotcha. Can
Which
Miles
is good.
overcome himself? Yes,
exactly. There's really, really good stuff in there. Also, like, this is in the marketing material, but like Venom plays a very big role in this game. It's fucking Venom rules, man. It's such a cool character design. Yeah. I love the concept behind it. It also typically involves corrupting a Spider-Man. And so like that's also fun because like we just said, like he's this kind of like almost universal good guy. And so it is interesting to see like what parts of him get corrupted. Yeah. I think like the Sam Raimi movies were very big when you and I were younger, and like
about to say I can't not think of Venom in a and not think of Spider-Man 3.
Yeah. Man. It's a very of that time depiction of Venom, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I think that like there's stuff to love there, but like the way that they talk about it in this one, I think is much more effective for like how that would go down. I don't want to speak too much on it because I don't want to like start talking about more of the plot beats, but like I'm a lot happier with the way that they treated it, which is great. Harry Osborn plays a big part in this game.
Let me get Harry.
And he's there from almost the beginning, which is really cool, that you get to like hang out with him, which is great. Again, I have to stop talking about any part of it the moment I'm like, okay,
in this.
It's not necessarily like I'm going to blow the plot or anything like that, but I do think it is impactful to have a lot of this just kind of play out, because I'm never really sure like what's going to happen or like who's going to do what. And so it is really satisfying to see it play out. And it's also like not that long of a game. So it's not like I'm saying like, okay, so 50 hours in, right, you know, way down the road, here's kind of the stuff you should expect.
You get betrayed. Like,
yeah. But it's a very playable game, so you can get through it pretty quickly. So I really don't want to ruin anything because like I think a couple of these plot beats do hit pretty hard. It's good, man. I also love the relationship that they have between Miles Morales and Peter Parker. Like feels incredibly real. They're like, Miles is like right at the end of high school in this one, and Peter Parker's like kind of in his mid-20s. Yeah. And I think like I can't obviously speak to like what high school's like right now.
Right.
But the mid-20s experience feels incredibly real to me, and like I can empathize with that Peter Parker. And I really love how those two experiences play off of each other for both Spider-Men, and how they like speak to each other, what they talk about, like how they're trying to take care of one another. It's just great. I love it. I was very skeptical of the two protagonists thing.
Well, you don't like multiple protagonists in games?
I kind of don't. I at least up to this point, I haven't really loved that.
So I know how you feel about a game we'll talk about later then.
Oh, I guess, because there's two that I'm looking at right now. I'm like, which one are you talking about? I think it was mostly the GTA 5 of it all. I like didn't love that. At least for me, like the punchiness of the narrative kind of got lost sometimes with the GTA 5, because like I would be doing something really important as any of the characters and then switch to another one and just be like, I guess I'm going to go to like ammunition and buy guns now. Like, what am I doing? And it just didn't really work as well for me. And I think it was also encouraging you to switch between those characters very often. Whereas like this one, I mostly just played as whoever they slotted me in as. Yeah. And then like kind of played as them for a while, and then they're like, hey, this is actually a level for the other Spider-Man. I'm like, all right, great, let me switch over to them. But it works really well. I think having both of them present and having both of their characters be so strong, they're able to play off of each other in a way that really works for me. Like, you see who they are, their motivations, and so like when they either come together and are a really strong team or like aren't, like that really works. It feels very earned.
Sure.
Whenever there's like, harmony or tension. Also, just like it bears repeating, but like, god damn, does it feel good to be Spider-Man just swinging around New York, dude. God.
I saw that they did like realistic physics too for the swinging. You can toggle that on and off. Did you see this?
Yeah, there's like an assist mode essentially.
Yeah.
I did not turn that off because every video I saw was somebody just like accidentally slamming themselves into a building. I'm like, that's fine. I don't need to do that. I need
to get good as Spider-Man. Got to get good at the swinging.
That's true. No, I kept it on for most of the playthrough. But yeah, like it's crazy that it feels this good. It felt this good in Spider-Man, the one from a few years ago. Felt this good in Miles Morales, and lo and behold, still feels good.
Still feels good.
They added like a little like a glider essentially.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
The web wings, as it were, also feels very, very good. Because you can get yourself moving pretty quick, and like if you can get the right speed, it feels so good to deploy those web wings. There's little spots around the level where you can like put like a web on each side of like a pole and just like pull yourself back as hard as you can.
Always the favorite thing to do in a Spider-Man game if you can do it.
It's so good.
The slingshot.
Well, they had the one in the last game where you pulled and then it was like, it's while you were swinging, and then if you hit X, you sort of like jumped faster off of that thing. This one is when you are stationary and you're just like giving yourself like a huge launch off something.
Oh, love it.
And because you're moving so quickly, if you use the web wings, you like go up higher because you have like lift on your wings. And it's really useful because in the last one, or at least in Spider-Man 1, it was mostly a game set in Manhattan. But they've added like Brooklyn and Queens to this game. And so like if you're trying to cross the river to get over to those other parts, it's really helpful. It's really helpful to just be able to launch yourself directly across. It's great. The physicality of it is really good. I'm constantly impressed with Insomniac's ability to make just movement feel really, really good.
They know what they're doing there.
They do. It's really great. I will say this game also has a couple of like really good quiet moments where it's not big bombastic shit happening. It's mostly through like the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man side quests that they do where like you're just helping somebody. One that sticks out specifically, and I won't go in too hard in specifics, but it's this one where you're helping this, I think, granddaughter help her find her grandpa. And like you go through all this stuff and eventually like do find him. And there's this like pretty extended sequence where you're just sitting on a park bench with him, talking to him. Fucking hits, man. It's so good.
Some real grandpa talk.
Yeah. Like there's no heroics going on. It's just like this old guy being like, here's the life that I've lived and here's the things that have happened to me at this park. And Spider-Man's just being like quote unquote heroic by sitting there and like giving him space to talk and feel and all that sort of shit. It's really good. I really love that stuff. I would love to talk more about like the specifics of the story because I think there is a lot there, but I'm actually going to hold off on that maybe until either you play it or, we talk about it at length. Yeah. Because I think there's some stuff that's cool to chew on to figure out like what did they mean and like what plot beats, what are they speaking to? Again, I think some of the character stuff that they do with people who I really wasn't expecting to have a big character arc is very cool.
Awesome.
All of that stuff is really great. Is there anything else I can say without spoiling a lot? I don't think so, but it feels like this and the Arkham games are like peak superhero video games for me.
Sure. Yeah.
I feel like both of those are pretty close to being like, yeah, that is as close to a perfect Spider-Man game or as close to a perfect Batman game that you can be. And I think it's that both of them they have integrated the things that are important to that comic book's character in addition to just like being fun,
Yeah.
So much of those Arkham games are detective games. You're going around looking for shit and
gotta get your Witcher sense out.
Yeah, I gotta go follow the stink lines to find the Joker or something. But it integrated a lot of Batman's character outside of just like beating ass,
Right.
I think a lot of the stuff that is fun about Spider-Man, the things that are really good about it are like his actions and why he's doing things. And obviously the web swinging just owns. So like that helps a lot.
Yeah. Web swinging on its own is just a fun game.
Yes. Yeah. God, dude, I saw a clip of a comparison between like somebody jumping off the Empire State Building in Spider-Man 2, like for the PlayStation 2. And then they just like they cut to the same scene in this one. I remember Spider-Man 2 looking so much better than it does.
Oh yeah.
It's so wild.
In my mind, it's photorealistic.
God. It's this game. I imagined this game when I think about it. God, it is it was a stark contrast.
It didn't age well.
No, I think again, a lot of those PS2 games, any of them that were going for like photorealism, it hurts a little bit to go back and look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I like overall, I think just a wonderful game. I don't think it's like so innovative that I'm going to look back and be like, wow, I can't believe that game existed in the way that I thought about the first one. But at the same time, like it feels just like more good stuff. So I've got nothing to complain about there. I think it's like genuinely very wonderful. However, the thing that genuinely did blow my socks off in a way that I was not expecting to, it's Alan Wake 2, David.
Oh, I was hoping it was going to be this one.
It is.
Ooh.
Let me see. So I played Alan Wake 1 when it came out.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking even at the time, like, wow, this is novel and different. Because I think they came out in 2010, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember.
Yeah, 2010. I feel like games were just flirting with
narrative.
Do we do a narrative and like, do we have to shoot everything? You know, like that was just like the dead center of modern warfare being like so hot and so big.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of the games that were, you know, AAA or whatever, it almost came as an assumption that shooting was going to be involved, you know? Yeah, so like some other stuff that came out in 2010 that were very big games, Mass Effect 2, which like, hey, don't get me wrong, really good, but definitely shooting.
Gotta shoot.
There. Red Dead Redemption 1, shoot. God of War 3, not necessarily shoot,
slice.
but slice and violence.
Yeah, violence.
Halo Reach was one that was incredibly popular that year. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. And so like there's a lot of violence just built into these games, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like even at the time, Alan Wake was definitely still a shooting game. But I think just even having like a flashlight that you had to flash at monsters to make them weak was like, whoa, dude, this is new stuff.
The flashlight is more powerful than the gun sometimes.
What are you talking about?
The gun is the pinnacle of violence, please.
Yeah. It felt very novel. And I think even the writing was a little bit like, it was a little hokey, but it felt like something different. Having a game be about a writer was like, that's new. That's something.
Right.
But I think in hindsight, I don't have that fond of like thoughts about it now. I haven't played it in a while, so like maybe it's much better than I remember, but like I think in hindsight was like, yeah, Alan Wake, that was fine, but like I bet that doesn't hold up super well. Or like I'm not quite as interested in going back and playing just like another third person shooter, you know? Because of course like that stuff would go on to be incredibly popular.
Yeah.
All that said, Control, another game by Remedy Entertainment, absolutely fucking owned.
Yeah.
So good. I was so impressed by it. And I think more than anything, I was just like, wow, these guys have like style. There's a lot of like things happening in these games that I haven't found in other games before, right? Like it is so stylistic. There's so much stuff happening. Feels like they're so committed to their vision of whatever that game is that it made me be like, oh wow, okay, maybe I should play Alan Wake 2, because up to this point I was kind of like, I don't know, like about the idea of that. And I think for whatever reason I had for a moment was like Alan Wake 2, okay. But then I remembered like, oh shit, these are the people that made Control. I'm way in.
I was about to say, they made Control. It's the last game they made. So Alan Wake 2 automatically gets the interest going. Yeah,
exactly. And so like I didn't really read a lot about the previews or like watch a lot of trailers. I was just like, it's kind of on site. I'm going to buy this game unless I hear like truly horrendous shit about it, and I will probably play it. Which brought me to the other day when I beat Spider-Man 2 and then immediately fired up Alan Wake 2 because I was like, I got to see what's going on in there.
You're on the twos right now.
Yeah, man, this is so good. I can't believe that they have made another amazing game.
Hell yeah.
I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what the game was. Like I heard like, hey, it's pretty good. I'm like, perfect. I don't want to read anything else about it.
Yeah.
And so like genuinely, I didn't know what the mechanics of this video game were.
Is there still flashlight?
There are definitely still flashlights. That plays a big role in it. But I think that this is, the first one felt like an action adventure game almost.
Yeah.
This one is much closer to a survival horror game. And it also has a huge emphasis on detective work, which like,
okay.
God, they have made that into such a mechanical joy.
Oh, all right.
Of not just like, here's a clue and you have to think about it, but the main person that you're playing as, at least in the beginning, is this woman named Saga, who is an FBI agent who has come to the town that Alan Wake 1 took place in. And it's now 13 years after that game. And there's been some like weird ritualistic murder that happened. And you're there as the FBI with Saga and her partner, who is just Sam Blake. It's Max Payne himself.
Wait, really?
So the guy who made these games, who's like creative director of a lot of Remedy, Sam Blake, he was the face of Max Payne, and now he is also the face of your partner, Casey. And it's so bizarre because like he's clearly, I think he's like Dutch or something, or Swedish maybe, but the voice actor is not. And so it's just his head in this game. It's so otherworldly. Whoa. But the two of you show up and essentially are just like, okay, we got to figure out what's going on with these murders. The game teaches you pretty quickly, like, here's how to do detective work. And the way that Saga does that is she has her mind place, which is, they call out specifically that this is like the mind palace that Sherlock Holmes has. And whenever you go to the mind place, it's like you click a button and it takes you to the interior of like a cabin, essentially.
Cool.
And there is a bunch of like just information on the wall that Saga is like cataloging. And it looks kind of like the Charlie thing from It's Always Sunny, where there's like a bunch of like pins,
pins and lines and like yarn or whatever.
Exactly. More organized, but that's pretty much what's going on. And so like whenever you come upon like a new quote unquote case, essentially, is something that will happen. It'll clear that part of the wall and you can put all the stuff up there of like, okay, here's the big question that I have about this case. Here are little individual bits of things that I'm trying to gather information on, right? So like, who are the cultists? What do they want? What are like the iconography that they use? And whenever you go and find like a new piece of information, like, oh, here's a symbol that I found. You can go back into the mind place and it's like a physical picture that you put on the board, and it like allows Saga to think about it in a different way, which usually will unlock some other option that you didn't have before, right? So like, if you get far enough into these cases in your mind, then, you know, she either unlocks new dialogue with people or you can perform some action that you couldn't before. And, you know, it's usually the way that you progress through the game is just like thinking through it enough as Saga, in this way that they have kind of like materialized what thought looks like for this woman.
Whoa.
It's so good.
That's cool. Like, that's really cool.
It's so cool and such a novel idea for like how to do detective work, because I think the only other thing that I can think of off the top of my head is either LA Noire or maybe more appropriately is Ace Attorney, where you are doing the detective stuff. And they don't really, you know, make a mechanic out of that, right? They just sort of like give you, the player, more information and then either unlock more dialogue or whatever just directly. Whereas I really like going into this like physical space as Saga and thinking through the things that I've just gotten and being like, how does this fit into the larger picture, right? And sometimes it's totally obvious, right? Like you get like a knife and she's like, this was used to kill somebody. Like, okay, yeah, for sure. But like when you get all of them, usually you will get a little bit more information, which is just really cool. It's really great. She also has this power, I think it's called profiling, where you have a big character that is important to the case, and it's sort of unclear exactly how this works, but she kind of asks that person a question in her mind, and they speak with their voice while she's like closing her eyes, and she kind of gets an answer, right? And it's again, it's very Control in that way, where it's unclear the mechanics of how this is happening. Maybe some kind of supernatural powers. She just calls it like an instinct when she's talking to her partner, and maybe that'll be revealed later. But I love that there is already this kind of like supernatural tinge to the whole thing.
Yeah, are we sure they're FBI or not FBC?
You do run into FBC people every now and then, which is really incredible, because like you as the player know like, yo, that person is doing some shit.
Yeah. Shady.
Yeah, there's like a guy that you run into kind of early on who's like doing readings on this like electrical power generator or something. And like he's very dodgy about what exactly it is. And he says like, oh yeah, I'm from the FBC. We're just, routine checks, nothing going on here. And Saga doesn't really have any reason to not believe them. But as the player, you're like, what the fuck is going on? What is this person doing?
Yep. It's one of those special items that's going to like teleport you to a different dimension or something.
Yeah, exactly. For anybody who hasn't played Control, the Federal Bureau of Control is the main like thing that you're exploring.
Yeah, the agency that you kind of work within.
Yeah, exactly. And so for them to show up here, it's like, okay. And I guess I haven't mentioned it yet, but they have very clearly signposted before this game came out, like these are two connected universes, like they're part of the same place. And so to see them kind of being playful with how those two places interact is so fun and so cool. It's great. So all of that's really wonderful without really like going too hard on a lot of like the explanations for why this is the case. But there are two very distinct settings that this game takes place in. One of them is like extremely Twin Peaks, which like, great. Yeah. Love that. Which is in itself set in like kind of rural Washington, which, love that. It's my backyard. Feels great to hang out there. So there's that space. And I think that they've nailed it. It just looks so good. It's so like picturesque in the same way that like Control's art design was so impressive in the way that it was like this cold corporate, like office building.
So good.
But oftentimes just like collapsed in on itself in certain ways. This one does the same thing, but for these like rural Washington areas. And then there's also this like depiction of New York as well, which is interesting and cool unto itself. I will say that it's not at the Federal Bureau of Control. Okay. It's a different thing. But I think both of those settings, they have just nailed. God, like their art style is so amazing and so fun. It makes it all feel really novel and really interesting just to like look at. I think that the rural Washington stuff pulls pretty hard from like True Detective and like I said, Twin Peaks. You get a lot of those in there. And so I just love to be in the world. I think they've just like nailed that part of it. The detective stuff is also like almost not open world, but open area where you have like kind of just a big space that you get to go wander around in, like collect clues and shit. It's all within this single town. And so you're kind of just like wandering from place to place, figuring stuff out. And so it leads to that same kind of fun where it's not a Metroidvania at all, but like where you have one part of the map that you're trying to figure out how to get into another part of the map. And then you solve some clue and it brings you over here and there's a new thing that you get to go check out. And like this game does the control thing so well where they intentionally kind of mislead you and trick you about the physical continuity of the place. Like in the same way that Control did, where you go through a door and it looks exactly like the room that you just came into or something. And you're like, what the fuck is this? And then you turn around and the door that you just came through is gone or something like that.
Love
like
it.
They do the same shit in this one that's just like so effective. And especially in the PlayStation 5 where like there's no loading times between these places. You're just like in a totally different environment from 1 minute to another. It's so effective in the same way that Control was. And like, I just wasn't expecting that. It is a testament to their vision for this game that like, I couldn't see how they would do that in a non-Control environment, like in a non big business building place, but they have in two places. Like there are two very different settings that stuff takes place in and it works in both. Yeah. It's truly shocking the effectiveness that they have here. I don't know. I guess I didn't get this in Control as much, but there is such a absurdity to the way that everybody acts around each other.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is it's very Twin Peaks. It's very Lynchian to just have like characters that do just the weirdest shit to one another. Whenever Saga and her partner sip coffee, they always do it in complete unison where they're both doing it at the same time. And I don't think that that's them saying like these are the same people. I think it's just a weird touch that like there is such artistic vision in how the game wants the directors and the producers and all that shit wanted to make this game that like they can do that kind of stuff.
Just showing how in unison they are as partners.
I mean, yes, right? Like that's part of it. But I think it's just, there's so many of these tiny little stylistic flares like that you can feel the creativity there. It weirdly enough feels like a Kojima game to me.
Okay, sure.
Like
the oddity of it.
There's so much, absurdity, the oddity of all of these characters. There is also like in a very Kojima way, a blurring of identity very often. Like
sure.
You saw this in MGS2 where, a lot of the characters were either like named after real people, or in the case of, what was it? Stillman in the game, that was based on a character from another book called City of Glass that like also was concerned with identity. And there were multiple Peter Stillmans in that book too. Mm-hmm. That this game also does that, where like who is who really is oftentimes a question in this game. You will see characters pop up that you're like, oh, this guy. And then they're like, I've never met you before, or something like that. In-game characters will treat each other like that, where, Saga will run into somebody and they'll know a lot about her. And she'll say, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, which feels all very Kojima. It's very postmodern in the way that like confusion is a part of it.
Sure.
But I love that stuff. I'm like, there is part of me that is a little bit bummed out that Kojima is so singular a lot of the time in his vision, because I don't love the idea that like this guy is the only one who can do it. It's applying a vision of auteurship to video games, and like there's just so many people that work in a video game. It's like impossible to say that like that's one person's vision. And so I'm really happy that the people at Remedy are also like, no, we can also make weird fucking video games.
Yeah,
it's so I'm so enthused about it with the level of creativity that is coming out of it. Mm-hmm. There's like I was saying before, there's so many games in here that I can feel, right? Like there's a lot of Resident Evil in this game, in like just the inventory system, in the kind of combat that it has. There's a lot of Silent Hill in it too.
Okay.
Where you're like wandering through these like cursed areas.
Sure.
And just sort of being like stalked by monsters and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But all of those things really do coalesce into a game that is unique and doesn't feel just like, it's a bunch of other video games put into one. Mm-hmm. It feels like its own thing. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that a lot of the influences are mechanical, that you feel the influence of certain mechanics, but there's also like the detective shit that is totally singular. I haven't really seen that before. So you can feel how the combat feels a little Resident Evil-y without it feeling like this is a Resident Evil ripoff. I think there's also the sparseness of combat, at least initially, where they don't really throw hundreds of dudes at you. So it feels a little more Silent Hill-y, where like part of the tension is just like, when is something going to break bad? Where's the bad guy going to jump out from? Because in Resident Evil, it does eventually kind of turn into like a shooting gallery, which is fine. But the horror of like, where's the monster isn't there anymore. Anyway, I think this game is wonderful, and I was truly not expecting it to be as good as it is. Mm-hmm. There's just so much style in it, in a game that like I was kind of expecting to just be another like 2010 shooter kind of deal.
Sure. Yeah.
And that was based not necessarily on their effort with control, but more on just like what Alan Wake 1 was like. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they really went back to the drawing board to see like, what does inventive game look like in 2023 as compared to 2010? And I think there's also a lot of reflection in the game about that like, the difference in time is a big deal. And they keep talking about like, because the game the originally took place in 2010 as well, and had in game it has been 13 years. So like there's a bit of commentary about like what has happened in that time, And I do think they have really succeeded in reinventing what this game looks like, and I'm just so happy that Remedy Entertainment exists. Like it's just such a weird vision for a video game, and I'm so happy about that. Mm-hmm. I started watching Twin Peaks again because I was like, hey, why not? And it you feel it. You feel the influence there. Yeah. And not just in the fact that like everybody's a weirdo or whatever, but just the attention to like unease that a lot of this game can build. The fact that you don't know a lot of shit and trying to like root through that and figure it out, and like basing a lot of the mechanics off that, about being a detective and trying to figure out what's happening. Mm-hmm. It's just so fucking effective. I'm really over the moon about this one. It's really shocking. And like, there's stuff I can nitpick about, like, sometimes the combat isn't super great. Some of the enemies can be like bullet sponges. You really just got to hammer on them, but I'm really not there for that. I'm there for pretty much everything else. It's great. I'm way into it. It is a real bummer that it is yet another amazing game that came out in 2023. Because like does this even break the top 5 as one of the better games I've played in a long time? I don't know. It's so hard to tell.
There's too many good games.
Yeah, but I'm really enthusiastic about it. I think it's really amazing. And I've said this before, but I really appreciate when a game is trying to be novel and be unique. Mm-hmm. That's what makes really amazing games is when they're doing something that is singular and there's like vision to the art there.
Yeah.
And you can feel it in this one. It's great. I'm sure I will continue to talk about this because I have not gotten super far. Mm-hmm. And it's just great. There's musical interludes between the chapters.
Ooh, I love
it's so
that.
good. It's so good. Also, just side note, the thing that happens in Control is still so effective here whenever you get to a new chapter and they have that big like white text on the background
big,
of the
like,
game.
Blocks letters.
Yes, it still works. I'm still like, God damn, it looks so good. It's great. I really love this game. Anyway, David, this will bring me to my Podtimistic thing of the week.
Which is?
Speed lines.
Excuse me? You're doing speed over here?
It's in video games when you get going really fast and they got those little faint wispies that start showing up on the edge of the screen.
Like, I'm going fast now.
I'm going so fast right now. I didn't check if this was the case, but I feel like there are speed lines in Spider-Man 2.
There's at least like a blurring of your surroundings when you go fast. Yeah.
Yeah. That game really communicates speed in a way that is quite effective.
I believe it. I love going fast with Spider-Man.
Oh, it's so good. And like just the ability to upgrade yourself to go just like a little faster, Always
like the first thing I upgrade in those games. I need to go as fast as possible.
I don't mind being weaker. I don't mind having less health. Let me go fast.
The city needs me now.
And I gotta get there. Oh man, it's so much fun. I love a speed line.
Sounds nefarious.
I know, it sure does. Line. It sounds a little bit like a drugs.
Sure does. Just a bunch of people standing in a line doing speed.
David, do you have something fueling your sense of optimism?
I do. And it's something we've talked about on this show before, but it is the unhinged glory that is the names of the NPCs in Baldur's Gate.
Yes. Yeah.
There are so many NPCs in this world that whoever decided that whoever was given the task, I should say, of naming them all was just like, I'm just going to make some weird shit. I'm going to make some weird but awesome things as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Like Hoots Hooligan.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Very good. Very good.
Blunt Scuncher?
Blunt Scuncher is a particularly brutal name.
And this dude's face looked like he was high as well.
Yeah.
Another one that's really good.
Yeah.
Sauce Man Chorizo.
Yeah, it's just incredible.
Oh my goodness gracious. That sounds like the nickname of like a professional athlete or something.
Yes, absolutely.
Or like an Iron Chef, Sauce Man Chorizo.
It feels like they somehow managed to build in like the stress of being a DM and somebody being like, all right, we're in Baldur's Gate. There's probably like hundreds of people, right? And they're like, yeah, probably. And then they're like, what's that guy's name? And the DM has to be like, fuck, I don't know, man. Blunt Scruncher. I don't know. Having to come up with a name on the spot feels like a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of the naming conventions for those people.
I believe it. And then the special one that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Gauntlet Thunder.
Good.
Gauntlet Thunder was a small dwarven woman.
Oh, yeah.
And I tried to talk to her, but then she disappeared. She glitched out of the game, and I've never seen Gauntlet Thunder again.
And you may never. It was maybe the only one to ever see her.
It was a beautiful 10 seconds where I realized this person's name is Gauntlet Thunder. And then I went to talk to them, and then they just were gone.
Yeah.
They were there 1 second and gone the next. That's it. Truly blessed by an angel. In that moment.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. The naming is amazing. It's just downright good.
Yeah, which brings me so much joy just seeing who am I talking to?
Who's this weird little guy?
Who's this weird little guy? What's your name, you weirdo? But yeah,
fun.
Love it.
Me too. It's good. Video games, man.
Do you want
to move on to our main thing then, David?
Let's do it.
All right, cool. Hey, it's Good Games. It's a segment where we talk about the okayest games of yesteryear and gush all the things that we love about them. Mm-hmm. And we have Another user suggested game, listener suggested.
Yeah.
I get so work pilled sometimes that I say users rather than listeners, which always feels so
They are using your
disingenuous.
podcast.
Yeah, using this one.
Selfishly.
We got a request from listener Lozzlescotch to play Sudeki. Thank you, Lozzlescotch, for giving us this suggestion.
Thank you.
I had never heard of this game.
I had heard of it. I had never played it. I had no idea what it was about.
Me neither. Absolutely zero clue. I didn't know what was in it, didn't know the tone, didn't know the content, type of game, nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing was in there.
Yeah. It was a complete mystery, which is always kind of fun.
Yeah, no, I do appreciate that whenever like somebody in our listenership tosses one where I'm like, what in the world is this?
Mm-hmm.
Because like, I feel like I'm usually staying up to date with games, and even still at the time felt like I was reading like 3 or 4 video game magazines a month, you know?
Yeah.
And so like, I figured I would have heard of this, but like sure didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I did, I just totally tuned it out.
Yeah. I don't know what, maybe something else was coming out at the time. Who knows? But it definitely got put on the back burner.
Yeah. This came out in 2004. So like, what else was big then? Oh God, 2004 was a big year.
I think it was a good year for games, wasn't it?
San Andreas, Halo 2, Need for Speed Underground 2, Pokemon Ruby Sapphire, Pokemon Leaf Green as well. Lord have mercy. Half-Life 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, Christ alive. Spider-Man 2, actually. That was that year.
Wow.
Yeah, I was busy playing other things.
Mostly Halo 2, I would think.
A lot of Halo 2 at the time. God, the Chronicles of Riddick as well. Sly 2.
Ooh,
Burnout 3 Takedown, dude. Come on.
That was a good year. Man.
Jack 3.
Not the best Jack game, but it's still a good game.
Tony Hawk Underground, just the regs.
Just Underground 1. Ooh, I messed with that game.
Oh, God. Yeah, just an ungodly amount of time put into that one.
Yeah. Create my own skater. Thank you. Yes, please.
Yes, please. Anyway, so yeah, I totally missed this one. I think it was an Xbox exclusive. So
it was.
Yeah, so that was just for that console. But hey, before we get too far, David, can I hit you with a few hot stats about this game?
Yes, please.
Hot stats.
Cool. So, like I was mentioning before, it came out July 20th of 2004 for the Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of their like exclusive games. I was going to bring it up now later, but I'll just bring it up now that like this game was intended by the like Microsoft developers at the time to fill the niche of RPGs on the Xbox because there just weren't that many.
Yeah.
And they were trying to bolster sales in Japan because like the Xbox just didn't really sell all that well in Japan.
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay, if we can get like one really good RPG, then maybe that will be a compelling argument to buy an RPG or to buy an Xbox for our Japanese fans, I should say.
Consumers.
Yeah, exactly. And so this was an attempt at like, let's do that and make a good one, which is sort of strange given the like design decisions that they made.
Yes.
But even still, like that was the intent behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So this was made by Climax Studios, which also made Silent Hill Origins, Serious Sam: The Next Encounter, Beast Busters, and ATV Off-Road Fury 3 and 4.
What is Beast Busters?
I sure don't know.
Is it like mutton busting, but beast busting?
I think it was a light gun game.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a light gun shooter for the arcade.
Hell yeah.
Shot bad guys. There's zombies who have guns.
Are you shooting beasts?
I think you're shooting zombos.
I wouldn't know if I would call those beasts, but I'll accept it because of the alliteration.
Oh, the main characters are named Johnny Justice, Paul Patriot, and Sammy Stately. I do like that.
Was it Johnny Justice?
Johnny Justice. That sounds like a cyberpunk character.
My goodness. That sounds like a propaganda character.
Yeah, that too.
And remember, kids, Johnny Justice says always support your local state government.
Yeah, exactly.
Pay your taxes on time, kid. Johnny Justice says don't go 35 in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. Or Johnny Justice is going to come kick your ass.
Or Paul Patriot will obliterate you with a rocket launcher.
Sammy Stately's going to force you to vote.
It's going to force you.
Maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need Sammy Stately to force people to vote.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I want everybody to vote. Maybe, though, Sammy Stately will also be like, yo, fuck voter ID laws, and then go kick ass for that, too.
We need Eddie education as well.
Yeah, the fourth secret bounty hunter in Beastbusters.
Exactly.
Edward Information is coming to get you.
He just throws textbooks at people.
Read this.
Check your sources.
I do have a review of Sudeki from Joe Video, an outlet out of France, and I have taken their review, run it through Google Translate, and a number of times, one language into the other, eventually arriving back out in English to mangle it and fuck it up real good to get an artist interpretation. I will say most of it pretty above board, except for the very last thing where they go full philosophy.
All right.
So Joe Video had to say, Sudeki is a game that takes you to a faraway place, but the series is nothing special. The production and gameplay could be improved, and the concept works, but we like action RPG games, so we have this concept. Poetry is great work, but life is short. And they gave that a 7 out of 10.
Poetry is great work, but life is short. This ties back into, are you plugging the Work movie again, Chase? Is that what you're doing here?
Yeah, this is all just kind of a scam to get more people watching The Work, the documentary.
Your dad's big break.
Contains my father. Yeah.
He's not featured in it. He is actually contained within the documentary.
It's Tron, but for documentaries.
Each DVD copy contains a piece of his soul.
Contains one fragment of my dad. We must collect all 7 fragments to reform my dad.
Your dad.
David, could you tell me what Sudeki is, video game gameplay wise?
I can. Sudeki is a third-person action RPG game, very much in the vein of like a Fable of this era. It feels like big difference between Fable and this game is that you can play as 4 different characters, and you switch between 2 different worlds, the light world and the dark world.
Yeah.
So yeah, the beginning of the game, you start off as just the prototypical sword-wielding man. And then you go off and start... Tal, yeah. Go off and start hacking and slashing to your heart's desire, these bad guys, and then the story kind of unfolds from there. Yeah,
you run into Princess Ailish pretty early on.
Billy.
And then, Billy Ailish. Billiam Ailish. And eventually you also are able to recruit Buki and Elko as well. No normal names in this game. Nobody came out with a normal one.
No. Yeah. Like you could say all those names together and I would have no idea what any of those people looked like.
I can remember Tal. Tal seems pretty straightforward.
Tal kind of sounds like Hal, just like your regular old guy.
Yeah.
But Ailish, Buki, and Telko? Telko?
Elko's like the dude with like glasses on who's like a scienceman.
Yeah, the scienceman. He's Eddie Education of this bunch.
This is Eddie Education.
Johnny Justice is definitely Tal.
Okay, hold on. What does that make the rest of them? We have Buki and Ailish.
Isn't Ailish a princess?
Yeah, she is.
So she's the stately one,
she's
right?
She's got to be, Sammy Stately.
Sammy Stately.
Which would leave Paul Patriot for Buki.
Which kind of checks out.
Buki's kind of tough. Yeah, Buki's got a tough girl thing going on. What did you think about this game coming to it for the very first time?
I enjoyed it. I really was surprised about the scale of the game in the very beginning.
Me too.
I did not think it was going to be this deep.
Big. It's a big video game.
Yeah, they really kind of show off in the beginning intro where you're going through the castle. You have this big bustling courtyard. You have this big story, this huge, this deep lore that's just like crammed down your throat in the first like 3 or so minutes. It was really fast. It was hard for me to absorb all that lore that quickly. And they're just name dropping like proper nouns all over the place. I'm like, I don't know what is going on, but I'm here for it because this is pretty cool. And I did like the intro cutscene that was, lots of like shadow figures, not shadow figures, but like ink drawings. It's kind of seemed like ancient drawings, and the way that it was presented was nice. And then the pretty deep like customization options with, you can get different weapons, you can upgrade them, you can get armor. It really has all the trappings of an action RPG in it. And I thought it was going to be just more of a run-of-the-mill action adventure third-person hack and slash game. And that definitely is in here a little bit, but it's not really the main draw, I would say. I think they're really going for more of that RPG draw, which is here's this big world that you can go and explore that has this rich, deep lore, and you're going on this grand epic adventure to save the world. Because the combat was fun. I had a good time with the combat, and I did like that they had like somewhat of a combo system in it.
Yeah,
not the deepest combo system ever, but it did keep me at least from just smashing A or X repeatedly, because if you did that, you would really lose a lot of the timing to your swing. And on the bottom left hand corner of the screen, it gives you there's like 3 little dots, and if you press A right as they like want you to, like the next empty spot will light up for when you want to press the next button. Then you'll start timing to it. Yeah, there's a timing to it. Then you'll do a combo. And you can switch between A and X as much as you want to do different sorts of combos. So it was fun to kind of discover what different things you could do. And Tao's got some moves. So that was fun. But yeah, I didn't get too far into the game. I got just to about where like there was like the ogre you were fighting.
Yeah, I agree with you that like the combat is pretty interesting. And I will say like the part that's like just beyond that is when you start to hang out with Ailish, and she plays like almost completely differently than Tal does. A lot of her moves are like first person shooter moves. Cool. Like you go into first person, and like I had mentioned Serious Sam in the like hot stats there, because it feels like that, where you're just kind of like unloading an unlimited amount of ammo onto a bunch of dudes, which for me that did actually feel kind of novel, of like these two characters are so different that they play completely different.
Yeah.
Which I thought was neat. I think that's a cool like flourish in games when they can make these characters feel totally different from one another. It's not done incredibly, but I liked in the Avengers game where like each of those characters played really different from one another. I feel like it emphasizes the fact that like these are different people.
Variety.
Good. Yeah. And yeah, like the lore was wild. I was not expecting it to be as dense as it is.
Really dense. Yeah.
A lot of implications a lot of the time of like it is suggesting a larger world and a lot of other stuff happening, which is cool. Like I think like games at this time were just flirting with that kind of stuff. You were starting to see it, and especially with like MGS having already come out. MGS 3 came out this year. What else did I mention before? Like San Andreas to a certain extent like has story, but like it's much more grounded in what it's specifically telling. But like this and like Red Dead Redemption, or sorry, not Dead. This was Red Dead Revolver that came out this year. Whoa. Never mind.
Still a fun game. Yeah, not a bad game at all. But yeah, like MGS 3's Half-Life 2 for sure was in this too. I think Halo 2 got a little bit of story, nothing like groundbreaking, but it was in there. And so like I feel like games hadn't quite started hitting on like the huge expansive stuff that was happening. Yeah.
That would happen in the future. You got this almost more in like the previous generation with like the Final Fantasies and stuff, where there was a much larger world that they were suggesting there. I feel like a lot of the stuff that was coming out early on in the Xbox era was just so heavily focused on like, look at this fucking cool tech, man. Look at the cool stuff we can do. Obviously PS2 and Nintendo were doing their own thing, but like, over on the Xbox side, you definitely didn't have this kind of game quite yet. Fable did come out this year, but later, which I found kind of surprising, because like you had mentioned it, I feel like so much of the combat feels so Fable-y, especially when you're playing as Tal. There's like a weight and a heft to it that feels incredibly Fable-like.
The cartoony sprites as well, and
the visual design style feels very Fable. I think the scope of the world feels very Fable. Like Fable felt big when I was playing it when I was younger.
Yeah,
and this one does too. I think it is like it's definitely a linear game, so it is taking you kind of for a ride as far as like how big the world actually is. But you're almost immediately through the castle square and out into like the field, which is like a new place. It's a new space to go and wander around
also, it took you a long time to get out of that castle. Like the tunnels just kept going. It's like a drawbridge, a tunnel, a door, another tunnel, another door, another drawbridge, and then you're out. It's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I feel like that was a thing, especially at the time of like trying to, I don't know, depict more realistic physical spaces.
Yeah. Look at how much space we can make in this game.
Yeah. It felt kind of like a flex of like, look at how powerful our hardware is, that we don't have to cut corners with making a space smaller than it would be, which I remember at the time feeling very impressive. But in hindsight, I'm just like, okay, guys, come on, like get through this section.
We get it.
And so it feels like a very strange artifact to play through something like that now, to be like, whoa, this feels aged.
Yeah. Weird flex, but okay.
Yeah, true. All of that was great. Can I just give a quick shout out to Camo, the bird merchant that shows up in this game?
Yeah, that was, I wrote that down too. I'm like, this guy rocks.
He's so good. Like, there's, when you roll up to the shop for the first time, there's like a little picture of a, I guess a bird on.
A bird wearing a wizard's hat.
Yes, yeah. And I'm like, oh, surely this is going to be like a cutesy little bird in here.
Yeah.
And you pull up and he's a voiced character.
Yeah.
And you're like, hello. And he's like, what's going on, bud? Let me get you your items. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Well, first he's like, oh, you want one of them free maps? People like you is why I have to work longer hours.
He was complaining immediately.
Sorry. The queen told me that you're supposed to give me this item for free. Come on.
Yeah. I loved his whole introduction. I was like truly not expecting that, which is like, I think it's that end of it, I think is kind of a fun part of the like of this era Western RPGs. Because there was really a distinct style, I think, at the time between like a quote unquote Japanese RPG and Western RPG. It's bizarre that, not bizarre, but it's an interesting choice that they said we are specifically going after like a JRPG market. Let's just make an action RPG. It totally ditched the turn-based stuff. And I do remember that there was a conversation at the time of like, are turn-based video games like kind of a thing of the past, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
And I remember feeling that way too, of like, why, like we have the ability to make action or to make combat real time. Like why even bother with turn-based stuff? Because it felt like turn-based combat was sort of a stand-in, like it was a metaphor for like what was actually taking place. And so like, why not just have that? Like when I first played Kingdom Hearts, it's like, oh my God, they're just letting me fight rather than like having me click attack and then somebody just runs over and punches somebody else. And so I feel like it took a second to kind of establish that like, no, that's actually still good as a way to design games. There was this strange middle period where you got games that were flirting with being both, you know, action RPGs and RPGs, and like those two things still exist, but I think there's a much more healthy group of turn-based games that are totally cool with explicitly being turn-based video games, you know. Sea of Stars comes to mind, Chained Echoes comes to mind. Like those are things that are very good games and very rooted in the kind of quote-unquote older style of games.
Gameplay is very different. It's much more cerebral when it's turn-based, right?
Yeah. And there's stuff you can make interesting about it. I think there was still just this push of like, we have to make everything like photorealistic, or
it has to feel like you are doing this.
Yes. Yeah. There was that knee-jerk reaction at the time. And I think it was just so many people pushing on the idea of like progress through video games, you know, like, because that was so important at the time, like the jumps from SNES to N64, or, you know, at this point from like PlayStation 1 to Xbox, like they're dramatic. They're very big swings. And so I'm not surprised that people were focused on like, how do we progress technologically? But you do see instances where other things kind of get left by the wayside or deprioritized, you know? But even still, I think that the combat was like pretty fun. But this also happens to be one of those genres like shooters where this specific kind of game has been innovated on so much.
Yeah.
Like the action RPG genre is like, so there's so many like genuinely very good games in that genre that it feels very strange to play one from 2004, you know?
Yeah, that's just like, oh, look at this cute little combo system they put in here.
Yeah. And like, I wouldn't say it's bad, right? Because I think that like Hades' combo system is not particularly wild.
No.
But Hades' combat is sublime just because of the amount of shit that you can do and have every inch of it feel really good.
Frenetic.
Yes. Yeah. And so like it does feel older, but I don't think bad. You can see the place that this genre would go eventually.
Oh, the places you'll go.
Oh, the places you'll go to God of War. I really love the fantasy of it all. I was surprised that there was as much of it in here as there was.
Yeah.
There's like, you know, bird people. There's like a centaur that like works on your armor at some point. Like,
yeah, I love the high fantasy.
Yeah. Like stuff that I wasn't really expecting to be in this game is pretty neat. I also liked that they don't tell you everything about a character immediately. Like it's, you go on to find out that like the drill instructor that like is in the game pretty early is like definitely drinking a lot and also is Tal's dad.
Yeah.
Which like they don't come out and say that immediately. So like I kind of like that there is those kind of reveals later that feel interesting. It lends a little bit of like rounding out of other people's characters.
Yeah.
In a way that I just kind of wasn't expecting.
Mm-hmm. I like that. It makes you think back to things and be like, oh, that changes that interaction that I saw before.
Yes, yeah, like how hard that the Arlo, I think is his name, but the drill instructor guy, how hard he is on Tal, and how he's like mad at him for like soldiers dying on his watch because also like Tal's brother died around him, and so his dad blames him for that sort of shit.
Yeah.
It's good. Like that's pretty competent writing, and it's like, you know, it's not groundbreaking, but to see it in 2004 is pretty interesting. To be like, hey, there's writing happening here.
They were thinking about it at least. How do we make these people compelling?
It's a lot of this weirdly reminded me of Final Fantasy 16. The active combat, the sort of like setup of the world, the just initial like going out into the field and fighting, you know, monsters and shit like that. It all feels pretty Final Fantasy 16. Obviously, those two things go out in very different directions eventually. But
yes.
I was thinking about it while I was playing. Like, hey, this is it's an action RPG, and a lot of these beats are you know, coming around. I asked Lozzlescotch if they had anything to say about this game. They'd mentioned it's a fever dream of a game that isn't really like anything I played. Lots of cool ideas. Maybe tech and budget weren't around but at the time to support it, but still. Which I agree. I feel like there's a lot of just like stuff that they're trying in this game. You know? Yeah,
they throw things out quickly. Like not just the dialogue and the character introductions, but just also the mechanics of the game. They're just like, here's the thing, here's another thing, here's another thing. If you wanted more stuff, here you go. Yeah. So they're just constantly giving you options and information to engage with in this game, and it's a little somewhat unhinged at some points.
Yes. Yeah.
I think especially with the character interactions and just some of the dialogue, but I think it's kind of in a fun way. There's this like kind of campiness, like faux seriousness to the whole thing, which I think is enhanced by, you know, the amounts of violence and blood in the game with such cheery characters and character design and art design. A little shocking. I'm like, and playing this game, like, okay, yeah, this was like an aesthetic for a bit there in the aughts. I'm like, is this like a Happy Tree Friends sort of deal here? Is that why we decided that this was a good thing to do? But they don't do it anymore. But it's just like, it's very of the times. Yeah, totally. It's whenever you finish someone with like a special move, they just sort of like deteriorate into various pieces of meat. Yes, viscera. They become viscera. Yes. And it's not even like disturbing gore. They just turn, it looks like chicken legs. They all turn into like just big pieces of ham. Like it's very weird. Yeah, very of this time. I feel like Fable did that a little bit sometimes too. Yeah. There's like sometimes weirdly violent parts of that game. Yeah, I don't know if you checked your surroundings too much in that first little bit of a level where you're fighting the Alclorians, I think it is. Yeah, yeah. And like the villagers have been brutalized. Fucked up, yeah. There's like a pickaxe in a guy's eye, guy's missing a head. Yeah, it's very of that era. And I think that the violence of it all is like a little bit, it's silly at first, but I kind of get used to it pretty quickly. Yeah. It's not like so outrageous. I will say the thing that does really distract me is the character design a lot of the time. Yeah. Specifically the female character design. Yeah. The women in the game are dressed just totally irrationally. It doesn't make any sense. Like all of the like Tal and Erko are both like, hey, we're tough guys and we're in soldier uniforms and shit like that. And Ailish is like, yeah, but what if I just had a little bit of my butt out too? Yeah, it's the classic RPG thing of the men are wearing armor, the women are wearing like bodysuits. Yes, yeah. And like it's a whole can of worms and like tough to digest, right? I've mentioned on the show before that like I don't think like sexuality has no place in video games, but it was so mishandled in the 2004 era where like I think a pretty vast majority of like character design for women was just meant to be like oogled at, you know? Yeah. And it just like, it also doesn't have anything to do with their character, you know, like none of this is that like, they don't ever address it or like, yeah, this is who I am or whatever. Or like, you know, there's no relationship with someone else or like with themselves about like why they would do that. Or, you know, if they're dressed for a certain reason, it's just sort of like, yeah, we know what you want, and feels kind of like another part of the violence where it is
it's put in there kind of not mindlessly, but as an assumption of like, this is what mature games are, or like edgy games are. And like, it super doesn't need to be, right? It just feels like a part of the game that wasn't considered very hard. And, you know, this game, I think it was, I don't remember if it was M for mature, but it was 16 plus. Let me see. Yeah, it was M. So like, it's just weird. It feels weird in hindsight. And like, it like I said, it's just incredibly distracting was the biggest thing I was feeling of like, it really takes me out of it. It really like, I'm looking at these designs like, what the fuck? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
It reminds me very often that like, I'm in a video game right now and I'm being like marketed to as a player.
Felt cheap.
Yeah.
In a way.
And like, you know, I wouldn't say games have like completely fixed this issue. There's still a lot of examples of this, but like, I feel like it has gotten better, that sexuality is treated a little bit more maturely, that usually it's not used for like cheap tricks like this, where, you know, it's not just like, hey, look at how hot this person is. That's not true. There's still that, but it's done in a way that's actually fine.
I was about to say you know? Hades comes to mind.
Yeah. I think Hades is like the best example because like everybody's hot, but like they're gods. They're trying to manipulate you, you know, like a lot of the people who are just like the hottest people in the room, that's part of who they are, you know?
Yeah. And it's not like they're trying to expose themselves. They're just, they're wearing like their regular clothes. They're just a god.
They're just also hot. Yeah. And like, that's great, you know, like sure, Aphrodite probably should be kind of hot, right? Like,
makes sense to me.
Dionysus should be kind of hot.
Yep.
And it doesn't. I think part of it too is just that like it feels so gross for it to be specifically for kind of like a teenage boy eye, you know, that there's just it's very uninclusive. It's meant for a specific group of people, and like I don't know. It having lived through that era, and I think not interrogating that enough at the time, it hurts to kind of see again in hindsight and be like, God, dude, what the fuck were we doing? So weird.
Yep, just sexualizing.
Yeah, just for, you know, because that's what we do. In the same way that violence is included, right? It's like, well, whenever you smash somebody, they got to turn into a pile of meat because like that's part of it, man.
You know, as far as the thought process of introducing mature content, having people just devolve into piles of meat and this level of sexualization of certain characters is kind of like, it follows the same process of logic, right?
Yeah.
Of just, I'm just going to go from 0 to 100 immediately. And here we are.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
There's no subtlety. There's no subtlety. It beats you over the head subtlety with it.
So yeah, like I don't think that really like ruins this experience, at least, you know, when I was playing it, but it sure was distracting every time I was playing as Ailish. And like, I zoomed in on the first person and started fighting as her, and I'm like, oh great, that's nice. And then go back into third person, I'm like, man, her butt still is out, huh? And the game sure does want me to see it.
Yep. And I was like, here you go.
She eventually does get an outfit change, which helps a little bit, but it's still very like the oogly idea is very present still. But yeah, overall, I think like this is, I'm surprised to see that this game isn't really like talked about as much or like referenced at all. I think there is really cool stuff in there. And in the same way that like, I don't know, I went back to play Fable recently, Fable 1. It's tough. It's not the easiest game to play in 2023.
Sure.
I think that there is a lot of charm to it still, but like it's not a mechanical wonder. And so I'm curious as to why this one didn't land quite as well for people, because I think there is like a lot of writing here that I think actually would have done pretty well at the time. It got pretty like mid reviews from people. And I wonder if that was just like, it was trying to split the difference of its market of like, we're trying to be a more like Japanese RPG while also we're doing the real-time combat thing. And I also know that their art style changed at some point. It was like much more anime influenced at the beginning of the game.
Oh. And
then they changed it to be what it is now.
Huh.
Which is like, I probably made sense at the time, but like in hindsight, I'm like, damn, dude, I wish I had that anime JRPG from these people. I bet that would have been sick. I bet that would have aged a lot better too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a bummer. I didn't know that happened. Yeah. Stick with one thought process and just go with it.
Yeah.
You know, one idea and go.
Again, going back to the Remedy conversation, like I feel like you see the vision so clearly and they don't make a lot of compromises what they're doing. And, you know, sometimes it is actually helpful to, you know, figure out a different way through something. But I feel like when you get huge changes like that halfway through the development cycle or even a little ways in, it does, you can kind of feel that, you know, you can feel the bones of something that used to be a certain way, you know, Duke Nukem Forever,
you can
or
feel
whatever
the
that
bones.
game was.
You can feel the bone broth. Duke Nukem Forever. Man.
Oh man. Anyway, I enjoyed playing through this. I watched a playthrough of the rest of the game. I just like had it on while I was doing other shit, and looks, you know, similar. Like you go to very different locales, which I like, and there's like a lot of different story stuff happening. But it is cool that they retain what's fun about the game throughout. Of just like, yeah, you're fighting around with your party. It's an RPG.
Love it.
Lozzlescotch, thank you for suggesting this one. This was fun.
Yeah,
it was a fun game.
I enjoyed this. This was a good time. Hey everyone, if you want to, hello. If you want to check us out online, you can go and visit podtimism.com. There you can find all the different episodes that we have published so far. You can even search to see if there is a specific game that you want to see our take on, if we have talked about it before. You can also go on there and suggest games or other bits for us to do. So please let us know what you want us to play and or what you want us to do. There's also some links to our social media on there. I don't know what we have an X. Is that right? We have an X?
We do. I think that the Discord link is probably more appropriate to come and hang out in
the
there.
Discord, yeah.
It's better. We have funnier things there than we do on X. And it also, we have a little bot that comes in and pings whenever a new episode gets launched.
Exactly.
So you can check that out.
Yeah, the worst garbage Discord
The worst
channel.
garbage.
That's us. That's where we at.
That's us. Yeah.
Thank you, Scout Wilkinson, for the beautiful podcast art.
Yeah.
It's great. We always love it. You can check to see if our commissions are open at co-fi.com/humblegoat.
The commissions. She got 4 slots open, baby. Let's get it done.
There we go.
Go get a commish.
And thank you, The Worst Garbage, for giving us a place to publish this podcast onto the internet and giving us a little home and a corner of the Discord to chat and interact with people with. We really appreciate that. So thank you.
Yeah. It's been cool to like be a part of that community now. It's great. I obviously love to, you know, see some new faces and like hanging out in there and talking about the shit that they like. I also love whenever somebody just pops in and is like, here's my Podtimistic thing. Like, so it's really great for somebody to just like toss something in there. It's very fun.
Love it.
Or somebody being like, hey, here's one from last year. Here's my specific angle on that Podtimistic thing or whatever, you know?
I know. I love to see that people are taking a deep dive into the catalog and working their way through. It's great.
There's some where I'm like, yeah, I remember that episode. And some like, what, did we did that? That was an episode we did?
Yeah. Sometimes it's concerning. Like I said things about something that I don't remember anymore and they're out into the world now, right? I have no autonomy over it anymore. It just exists. I feel like there is a time frame of like, yes, I remember that. And then like a couple times I've just popped in to be like, what did we actually say about that? And like, I have A, zero memory of this, and B, it sounds like someone else talking about it because I remember it so little. I'm just like, wait, what the fuck is this? It's so bizarre. It's such a strange experience. That's the cost of doing a podcast every week, man. Every week without fail. Well, sometimes we don't do it, but
sometimes fail.
Mostly we're here. Sometimes fail. Sometimes we change it up. Let's say that. Not fail. Change it up.
Yeah, do other stuff.
And lastly, thank you, dear listener, for taking the time out of your day to listen to us. Yeah. You could listen to a lot of podcasts. You could do a lot of different things with your ears right now. And we appreciate that you choose to listen to us. We love doing this. We do it even if we didn't have this cast to do it on. Yeah. So yeah, it's just cool to have other people love to, or enjoy, I should say, listening to us. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you.
Chase, do you have any video game wisdom for this week?
I think probably try to avoid getting cursed if you can.
That's I mean, sage wisdom, not just video game wisdom, but just sage wisdom for life, truly.
Sage wisdom. Playing a lot of Alan Wake. Seems like there's just like curses going around and shit. It seems like it sucks, you know, like just constantly being followed around, especially if it's like a multi-generational curse. Like, fuck, dude. Yeah. Just getting blasted over and over again. Yeah.
And you definitely don't want to get cursed in Dark Souls. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, what a nightmare, truly.
Truly bad. It like halves your health. It sucks.
It's awful. Never get cursed in Dark Souls 1.
It's not easy to fix either.
I was cursed for hours.
Yes. No, me too. The canonical run through Dark Souls has you be cursed, I think.
I think that's just part of it, right? You're just like, you got to spend some time in the curse. All right.
Straight up sucks. But like, you know, just don't get cursed. So like avoid tombs or like any djinn that come up to you and offer you a deal of like huge wealth or something.
Djinns or demons or devils. Yeah. All the above, not trustworthy.
Unless it seems pretty sick. Yeah.
Yeah, unless it's totally worth it.
If it's like get cursed, but also like you own a home now. I don't know.
We know Kirby's taking that one.
We know Kirby's taking that deal.
Got to get that sweet, sweet home equity, baby.
Yeah. Interest rates are bad right now,
Interest
man.
rates are brutal. Insane.
There's a genie that shows up and is like, hey, for the rest of your life, you will only say everything in Mario voice, but you get a house and your interest rate is 1%. It's a me, David. I'm talking
for your
like Mario
whole life.
It's a me. I'm taking that deal.
Okay, what would you do for no interest rate on anything for the rest of your life? Would you cosplay as Mario every day for the rest of your life? Like fully Mario with the accent. You're ready for that part.
Does anybody else know about this curse?
No.
Oh God. Because I feel like that would nearly ruin almost every relationship I have.
But think of the savings, man.
The savings are good. That's the thing. Like no interest rate on anything. I could go to a loan shark and be like, give me $1 million. And like, what the fuck are they going to do? No interest? Get out of here.
You have to quit your job and become a plumber.
I mean, that one's fine. You know, plumbing's a good skill.
They make good money.
Make good money. I would need to get something to like not fuck my lower back up for the rest of my life. But like, you know, maybe I just work like a limited schedule.
Let's say you get 1 hour a day of not Mario.
Still, if no one can know about the curse, I still feel like that's going to ruin my relationships. Because even if I say I can't explain it, but I then just randomly talk like a normal dude for an hour, everybody's going to be like, what is this bit that Chase has been doing for like 15 years?
I'm going to get a 5150 on you.
I think so. Like, I genuinely think I would probably be like committed at a certain point because they're like, this isn't the man that I know.
He's gone. He's just Mario now. He ate the Wonder Seed in real life, and this is what happened.
He stared too deep into that plumber abyss, and the abyss stared back.
Pretty much.
I'm stuck on this hypothetical. I'm really kicking it around.
You haven't said no.
I haven't said no.
You haven't said
You're right.
no. I'm not going to do that because
I feel like
it's a deal.
Life would just be so
you
easy.
feel the deal in your bones. The bone broth is humming inside of you as you speak.
Yeah, we've got a simmer going here, and it does look tasty. Like, I have a kid, right? Not now, but like in the future, I will, hopefully have a child. Their dad's just Mario. That sucks.
Maybe it's really cool.
I don't think so. I think that charm wears off pretty quick.
Yeah.
I go to like a parent-teacher conference, and they're like, listen, Mario Jr. is really great, but he just needs to apply himself a little bit harder. Give me some examples. I need to know more about how to coach my child into being a better student. Like, they can't look at me in good faith and say like, okay, here's some stuff. They're going to be like, is that Mario? Are you doing a Mario?
Are you doing a Mario thing right now? I mean, they're going to know you're doing a Mario thing because you're going to be dressed like Mario.
Yeah, that's true. It's going to be pretty obvious.
You still haven't said no.
I just wonder if there's any contingent of people who would stick around, who would be like, this is just him, I guess.
I'd stick around.
I don't know, man. It's going to put this relationship to the test. We do a podcast every week where we talk to each other for about 2 hours. Can you imagine having for every single week, you have precious few hours and 2 of them are just listening to Mario talk about video games.
Well, I would hope that you would choose one of those hours to be regular Chase. Let him come out.
That's the thing. I got precious time, David. I got nothing. I need to like just scramble together to be with my loved ones for that 1 hour.
Let everyone get on the Zoom call. I need to talk to you. Tell you how I really feel.
I don't know though, man. 0 interest rate sounds pretty sick.
It's a good deal. It's a good deal.
If next week I come back with a Mario voice and a house, you'll know what happened.
We know what happened. It's canon.
See you next week, everybody.
All right, see ya.
Bye.
TWG, the worst garbage. Online.